What's going on, everybody? I'm Dakota Haynes with Tailgate Discussions. I've got my co-host Alex here, as well as Anthony Jobbagy. Anthony, you've been with Fantom here for a little bit. Thanks for joining us for the first edition of Tailgate Discussions and Fantom Sports collab Game of the Week. Today, we are choosing the Georgia versus Clemson matchup. Guys, what do you know about these two teams?
Yeah, I guess I'll go. This is a really on the 31st going to be a great day of football. There were like so many good matchups for us to choose from coming into this Dakota.
Mm.
We ended up going with Clemson, Georgia, and these are going to be two teams in the top 25. It's going to be a noon game in Atlanta. Georgia's going to be opening the game as 13.5 point favorites, but as we all know, Georgia fell just short of the national championship. But what people probably don't know is more about Clemson. If I remember correctly, they were like started the season like 2-4 or something like that, but they kind of regrouped and finished the year 9-4. So a good, but for Dabo standards, not very good year. His fans are kind of getting a little mad at him, but it's a big prove it year for both teams. So I'm excited for this game.
For me, I think we all know about Georgia and how we expect them to probably be in the title game come January. But for me, it's about Clemson, like Alex said about Dabo Sweeney. You know, fans have kind of gotten irritated a little bit. They haven't been in the college football playoff recently. He hasn't really went into the transfer portal. So,
At
you
all.
know, there's a little bit of tension rising. But my big thing is the quarterback Cade Klubnik. You know, I expect him to have an even better year than last year. He went 19 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. I think this could really be his breakout year of maybe hitting high 20s in touchdowns. And I think if he can do that, Clemson can very well be in the picture for the playoffs this year. Um, but I'm expecting a very close, tight knit game come the 31st.
Yeah, looking at the predictions of this game, it could be very well tight knit. The spread on this is just 12 and a half. So that's in favor of Georgia, but the prediction and the over under, I mean the over from what I've seen is 48 and a half.
Wow.
Um, and a lot of places out there are predicting Georgia by 20, but that's there's a lot of like you said, Anthony. This could be a very close, well, tight knit game. Um, and Alex, you mentioned Georgia not making the playoff last year. They're definitely looking to do that this year. I think they've made some significant upgrades in the offseason, and we saw that actually in their spring game. I took a look. I took a look at some of that spring game, and they looked amazing. Carson Beck is looking like he's going to be a potential Heisman candidate. So this team is ready to go. But let's talk about this game. The spread obviously at 12 and a half. Do you guys see Georgia winning by more than 12?
Um, when I looked, I saw him at 13.5, but you probably have the more updated one than I do. So I was looking at something from a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm glad. I think that they lowered the spread because I even don't know. Having Clemson or having Georgia favored by 2 scores against Clemson is like that's a lot. And believe it or not, this is on some of the research I did for this game. Dabo is 12-1 against the spread when he's
Hmm.
an underdog by 5 or more points. So he hasn't been an underdog by that many in a while. Like you probably have to go back a couple of years, but Dabo and Clemson used to have this underdog type of mentality, and he's not, he's no stranger to winning those big games against better teams or teams he's not favored against. And when you look at Clemson, they have to replace 6 starters on defense, so a lot of new faces there. But two names that you'll probably want to know are their nose tackle Peter Woods, who's a 5-star recruit, and then their linebacker Bear Carter, who had a really big year last season. And the big question that I'm going to be thinking of is whether their defense will be able to force Georgia into like passing situations. So can they get Carson Beck into like third and longs where they know that they can get pressure on him, stuff like that. Clemson actually like blitzed their opponents on nearly half of their dropbacks last season, so they just love to get pressure on the QB. So for them to like actually play to their strengths, they're gonna need Georgia to get into third and longs. Um, and then when you look at Klubnik, like Anthony said, I think he's going to take a big step forward as well. This is like the second season now that he's with the same offensive system, same coordinator, but this year he's going to have even better weapons. They returned their running back Phil Maffa, who was very, very good last year, and they're going to have some really nice receivers in T.J. Moore, a five-star that they got in the cycle, and then Tyler Brown, who was a really good slot receiver last season. So there's really no excuse for Klubnik coming into the season to like not take the big leap forward. We'll see if they're going to be able to actually put it all together in week one against a team like Georgia. I think the opposite's going to happen. I think they're going to come out and be a little sloppy. They're going to have to mesh a little bit before things get going. But overall, I'm pretty high on this Clemson team this year. I remember last video we did, I picked them to win the ACC. So they could surprise me. I do think that they're going to beat the spread, and they're going to make this closer than what it indicates. But, yeah, that's how I'm thinking right now.
For me, it's kind of short and simple, but it could go really either way. I think since it is against a big SEC team, Dabo's done pretty well against SEC teams. I don't think he's really folded under them. I think he's really one of the few that can actually put up a fight against the SEC. But for me, it's about if they can get off to a fast start. You know, like you said, if the game's in Georgia, no matter where it is in Georgia, it's going to be a tough place to play, especially for Clemson. So for me, I think they need to get off to a hot start. If they start off first and second, maybe third drive, and they were looking really slow, and Georgia is on just a pace of like they were last year, I truly believe Clemson is not going to cover. But I think with the Dabo Swinney having the SEC record again in his favor, I think that's going to help him and help really the spread a lot. No one that yeah, it's making it closer than it is. But I think those two things kind of, at least I put into the factor, because if they're not off to a fast start, I think it's going to be a blowout. I think Georgia can easily blow out teams no matter who they are. But if Clemson can keep it close, get off to a hot start, Dabo, I can rely on beating a top team like Georgia. So,
Yeah. And one more thing I wanted to say, Clemson is really, man, I just lost my train of thought. Dakota, you're up.
It happens, man. I'll just say that. But what I was gonna say is, for Clemson, this game all comes down to health. Based on what I've seen coming into this game, they might be down a couple of secondary starters, which could hurt their defense. And in a game against a team like Georgia, you need to be fully healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Dabo Sweeney hasn't announced his depth chart for the game quite yet. A lot of teams don't up until the morning of, or the night before or whatever. So we'll see if Clemson is fully healthy. But based off what I've seen right now, it's not looking so promising, which leads us to our picks for this game. Again, this is the game of the week, and we are choosing Georgia, Clemson. Clemson is coming in ranked number 16, and Georgia obviously ranked number 1 in the nation. So, Anthony, we'll start with you. What's your pick?
I'm going to go Georgia. 38-24. I think they pulled away at the end. I only go with this pick because of Carson Beck and Kirby Smart. Um, I just think I'm just really high on Carson Beck this year. You know, I wasn't really last year, and then, I just he's kind of turned me into a Carson Beck fan. So I'm going with Georgia. I think they could easily have an undefeated season and win the whole thing. So for me, I gotta see a team put up a fight against Georgia in order for me to think otherwise. So I'm gonna go Georgia.
All right, Alex.
Yeah, even though they lost in the playoff, they're still riding like a 39 game winning streak in the regular season, just one of the longest ever. They returned 4 out of their 5 starters on the offensive line. They're going to be fine at running back and receiver, as we all know. And I think, like we said at the beginning of the episode, a lot of people are kind of quick to write off Dabo and Clemson as a program, like they're kind of on a downward trajectory, but I don't know if that's true just yet. Um, Recently, 24/7 Sports released their team talent composite,
Mm.
and both Clemson and Georgia rank within the top 5. So I think the narrative that Clemson's kind of like that much below Georgia, I don't think it's that true yet. Um, when you look at Clemson the last few years, we all know they're good when they have a good QB. If they have Lawrence, they have Deshaun Watson, they're going to be a contender. If they have the Klubniks and the DJs of the world, then you know what happens. They're going to have a 9 to 10 win season. It'll be a good but not great year, and Clemson fans will be pissed. But even though I think Clemson's due for a great year, I have Georgia coming out and winning this game by, I think, 10 points. I think Clemson's going to make it closer, and they're going to beat the spread. But the thing I forgot to say, I was picking off of Anthony's point, is like you can't let Clemson get down early. Klubnik's forced to throw the ball. Like Georgia's just going to make him make mistakes. And the problem with when you go against teams like Oregon and Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, these teams don't slip up in week 1. They don't have sloppy games. They're good out of the gate. And
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be Clemson's biggest issue coming in. I think they have some things to work out throughout the season, and they're not going to be at their best in week 1. Georgia will look like their best in week 1, and they're going to come out victorious.
Yeah, we saw it exactly what you're saying last week with Florida State, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Clemson is on the same level as Florida State. They've got some things that they've
Agreed.
got to work on in this first week of the season. So with that being said, it's a full sweep across the board here at Fantom Sports. Georgia is going to take this game. My prediction is 36-26.
Okay,
So,
so you
like
think
you said,
Clemson covers?
Clemson covers the spread. Again, it's a 12.5 spread. That's not hard to really beat, especially, with what we've seen so far in the opening week of college football. 2 games on Thursday. Very, well, surprising games, I should say. And then obviously last week in week 0, Florida State losing to, I think it was what, Georgia Tech?
Yep.
Yeah, Georgia
Yep.
Tech. So, yeah, so full sweep across the board for Georgia here in this one. Thanks for watching the first episode of the Game of the Week here at Fantom Sports.